Another video today. I think I'm going to talk about anxiety and PTSD specifically today. I'm shaking my camera because I got it sitting on my table all funny. Anyway, this one's going to be, I'm going to talk about, categorize anxiety and PTSD a little bit. I might tell a little story. Trigger warning in this one, if I do tell a story. I think I might go into some of the things that gave me PTSD, and it's going to tie into, there's a lot of people that don't know about it or don't have it, don't understand that it's not just extreme events. Like everybody that thinks of PTSD, for example, associates that with people that have been to war, which is very true, but it's not just that. So my story can go along with an example of a way you can get PTSD that's not coming back from war or the army, but it has to do with some abuse in a relationship, loss. I might talk about a loss of a friend. I haven't decided if I'm going to tell that story, and if I do, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, and there's just reasons for that. Too many people know about what happened in my personal life with that, and it's just hard to talk about. Along with had some car accidents. So those are trigger warnings that may or may not end up talking about in this video, and let you know now if you can't handle hearing about that kind of stuff. You may not want to watch this. It's just fair to bring it up before we get started. I don't want to cause anybody any undue emotional distress from hearing emotional stories, So moving forward, there are people that don't have anxiety and PTSD that don't understand it, and they look at you like you're weak or you're over dramatic or oversensitive, or you're making a big deal out of something that shouldn't be because it's not a big deal for them. And if you do have it, you understand what I'm talking about. It's hard to explain to somebody. And anxiety, there's a natural level of anxiety that everybody feels. Excuse me, I'm drinking my coffee. Anyway, and it's normal to have some stress and anxiety. Everybody has that. But there's a level of anxiety that gets to be a point where it's difficult to manage on a daily basis, or like panic attacks, for example. It's hard to explain a panic attack to someone that's never had one, and they're not all the same, and some are worse than others. Like my man has anxiety too, but he doesn't have panic attacks. Okay, he does rarely, and I've seen a few. He does have them, and it makes him nauseous, and he's obviously panicking, but his are not like mine. Y'all can hear my ghetto neighbors outside, so excuse that. But anyway, moving on. Some panic attacks are just, your heart's racing, you can't stop worrying about one thing. Sometimes it upsets your stomach. It could just be that simple. Mine are more like, if I've learned to cope a little because I've been having them for 10 years. When I first started having them, I didn't even know that's what it was, but I have gotten sick, like nauseous, throwing up. And it's only because it starts out, first I get hot. And I sweat. I'll sweat when I'm cold, just from stress. being hot and sweating, even for no reason, is a symptom of anxiety for one. But, start out getting hot, and then, I might get my hands would get shaky, and my heart's racing, and then I feel heat in my face for one. Then, if it gets further than that, I try to step away from the situation I'm in, or, just try to take a minute away from what's causing me, because I've learned what causes me to have a panic attack. But if you don't know, or you don't know how to walk away, then it can progress from there. But if it keeps going on, then it's harder to breathe. Then I start to get choked up, and it's like I'm coughing, and I can't breathe. I can't catch my breath. It feels like my throat's closing up, or my chest is like tight. And then I usually cry after that. And I get like this tunnel vision, especially if I'm in crowds. I used to work in retail. I told you, I think I said Walmart. I told you I worked at Walmart last time. I've worked at like 3 different Walmarts. So when I had to stock on the floor, say second shift, it's busy. And during Christmas time, there's a lot of people in my aisle trying to do something. I feel trapped in. And they learned, I had, luckily my managers were really good. And they would, during Christmas time, they'd put me in somewhere where a lot of people weren't shopping. Like everybody is always in grocery, they're in toys. So I would end up stocking the makeup, because hardly anybody was in makeup during Christmas time or something like that, because I just couldn't be, I've had panic attacks at work, but it's like tunnel vision. And sometimes when I can't breathe and it's like I'm choking and I'm crying, I'll get sick. And that doesn't happen very often, because like I said, I usually step away at that point. And it's embarrassing. I'm sitting here crying because I'm stocking some shelves, or the kids are running around and I just start puking and crying for it. That's what it looks like on the outside, so. But that's anxiety, and it's because I believe, anybody that has anxiety, that's something that your brain formed, how do I put it? That's a fight or flight response. Okay. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. And they call this anxiety disorder, PTSD disorder. I hate how they call it a disorder. It's not a disorder necessarily. It's our minds were, okay, I'm going to say straight up, I don't necessarily completely agree with evolution theory, okay. But I do believe we've adapted over time to our environment, right? Well, we've only been living this modern lifestyle inside homes and modern, in cities the last few hundred years, okay? Before that, we were living a different lifestyle, more like village life, or kind of more like tribal lifestyle. We needed that. When you feel that rush of what we call anxiety or panic, it's an adrenaline rush, and we don't have a use for that. But that heart racing, tunnel vision response was useful if we were getting chased by an animal, or we had to fight, or we had to run. We could use that when it was useful, but now the way our lifestyle is, it's not useful to us anymore. That's where it comes from. And so it can come out 2 different ways. It's fight or flight is what they call it. You can freeze, you can panic, or you can fight, or you can run away. But there's only so many options that your body naturally gives you, and it's hard to control that kind of response. Period. It's a physical thing. It comes from the most primal part of your brain. It's not a logical thing. So you could get an anxiety response based on something that happened that gave you a lot of anxiety. Something that, if something happened in public and it caused you to stress out, or something bad happened to you in public, then your mind associates that with, I have to react. Then you have fear, then you have anxiety in crowds. It's just your brain learned to do that. And it's a basic function. It's not a conscious function. So that's hard to explain that to people. And PTSD is similar. You went through something serious. It could have been, there's two types of events, traumatic events, meaning a long-term event, like people that do go to war, or people that are in a long-term relationship that's abusive in some way. It can, something that lasts a couple years. That means you didn't just go through it once. Happened over and over. You saw something or went through something over and over and over for years, and it built a response in your mind that this is something that I need to fight for, or be afraid of, or run away from. And it's built into your mind, and you can't just necessarily let that go. It's not necessarily something to just walk away like, oh, it's over now. It's not just over now. Your mind is going to remember that, and it's not in the frontal logical area of your mind anymore. It's deep. It's in the back. I don't know the parts of the mind. I don't remember what they're called. But the primal part of your mind remembers this. This was an attack, or this was a dangerous thing, and I need to remember that I need to react to this because, it was dangerous then, it's dangerous now. So anything that reminds you of that dangerous thing, that either was a one-time terrible thing you went through, or a long-term terrible thing you went through, your primal part of your brain remembers to react to that. And, some people have flashbacks and nightmares because, depending on what it is, it can be hard to forget. And whatever is in your mind is going to come back out one way or another, So, but it's not just war. It's not just, this is the trigger warning part, okay? I'm going to say it again. This is the trigger part. So, this is where you may not want to continue, depending on how strong you are, how much you can handle, how recently something happened. See, a lot of the things I went through are not very recent anymore. I'm able to talk about it. But I don't know you or your situation or who's going to watch this right now. I don't have a lot of people watching me, but eventually I might. This is the part. So right around 13 minutes and a half. I'll put that in the description. Anyways, I got married. Well, let's see. I met my husband. That's going to be my ex-husband. I'm filed divorce papers now, but see, this is a complicated story. We met when I was 18. Got pregnant after 3 months of dating because I'm just a really good planner. I was young. He was young too. We were both 18. He's a little bit younger than me. Just like 6 or 8 months younger. Okay. But pregnant in 3 months. Married it before I was 19. He hadn't even graduated. He dropped out of high school. I told you I was homeschooled. So I went to public school, but by the middle of my junior year, I was already working. School wasn't my deal. I used to get mad. I'm like, oh, you didn't put your name on your paper, you got a 0. But they'd hand it back to me. I'm like, you knew it was my paper. So why'd you give me a 0? You knew it was mine. Well, you didn't have your name on it, so I didn't know it was yours. But you gave it back to me. that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm done. So my mom was like, eventually, why don't you just get your GED? We were going to do that anyway. It wasn't a big focus of my parents. Like, they weren't, as long as I have enough education to function as an adult, that's what they were worried about. So I got my GED at 17. I was a manager at a KFC by 18. I had had my first job for 3 years. So, as soon as I turned 18, I was already graduated a year before my class because I had my GED. I was a manager and I didn't get out of there. But he was dropped out of high school because he is held back. He didn't even start his junior year, never had a license, nothing. And we tried to help him. He couldn't pass his GED. But he has a lot of family stuff. His mom bounced him around. Long story short, we were not prepared. But everything was good with us. He, seemed like a big old sweet guy until we were actually married. I moved to his hometown, like 80 miles away from where I was from. And we had a baby in our first place. And then it was like lockdown time. Very controlling, very insecure. More than I anticipated. And it got to where, it was my vehicle, but he had the car keys. I didn't drive. I was working. And most of the time he didn't work. Our whole relationship. I would walk to work while he kept the baby in the car. Didn't drive me. I didn't have a phone. He'd pick up my check and cash it. I didn't get the money. It wasn't physical abuse. Not very often. Like, he didn't hit me. Sometimes I tried to hit him just because toward the end, I was trying to get him out of the house. But when you're married, what's yours is mine, baby. I can't make him leave. So, but yeah, no car keys, no paycheck, no food stamp card. I couldn't go anywhere by myself. Even if we were arguing, he'd follow me around the house. Not even the bathroom. No privacy. Nothing. Tried to go to my friend's house 2 doors down. You ain't going there by yourself. Why are you over there? Why can't you stay here with me? If I tried to run over there, we were fighting. He'd throw stuff, break stuff in the house, holes in the walls, peel out with his car. I got to where my oldest son, he's the only one that he actually lived with Josh when we were together because we only stayed together for about 3 years before he moved out. We split. We've been married this whole time, but we didn't live together this whole time, My oldest was afraid of motorcycles and loud cars at like 2 years old from remembering his dad peeling out the house. I would go to my friends and he'd like sit there, block traffic we lived in a trailer park. Imagine that. Honking, honking, honking. Come out there, come out, come out, come out. Called the police on him. They did nothing. The only way I got away is I had to lose everything. He quit paying the bills. We didn't hardly could afford to pay the bills. I worked at fast food. He had decided to tried to bump off a drive-thru with his friend. And I picked him up afterwards. So I was the only one that was 18 and I got the complicity to theft, it's expunged now, but I couldn't get a good job. So I was always working fast food at the time and that's all we had to live on. I was trying to pay the bills with that. Didn't pay the bills. Got me evicted by the time I was pregnant with my daughter and didn't pay the bills for 6 weeks. The day, I come home from work Friday. We got eviction notice. Okay. Saturday morning, I'm moving out. My sister's picking me up. Not only did he move out, I helped him pack his stuff. I washed all of his clothes. Yeah. But we would fight. He would chase me around. It would go on and on and on. And it would be, if I didn't want to give him my last $20, is it really worth fighting over for the entire day? I was trying to drop him off anywhere. if he was with a friend and they wanted me to go take him to get beer or something, right? They couldn't drive if they were drunk. That's the only time I actually got to drive. So they would go in Speedway. I tried to leave him there. I did leave him there once. We were going to visit family in Marysville, where he was from. I tried to leave him there too. Stayed up all night, packed all of his stuff, and left it in the back of the trunk. He didn't notice until right before we were going to leave, or else I could have left him at his mom's, 80 miles away. It didn't work. And I had a terrible day. But finally, I lost the house. He left me. Had my daughter 2 months early. From stress and working and lifting too much. From trying to keep my house. Because I just did whatever they wanted me to do to get hours. That's when I started having panic attacks when I was married. It was just too much. That was just the first thing, That kind of stuff can give you PTSD. That was my first long relationship. But I tried to call the cops and tell them. They said, "Did he hit you?" No, he's too smart for that. He knows. He's a big man. A lot bigger than me. I'm 5'7" and I only come up to his shoulders. He's like 350 pounds. He won't hit me because he'll go to jail. He just does everything else. Somehow, well, ma'am, if he didn't hit you, we're not going to take him out of his own house. You're married. And then later, I finally put my life back together. Got in my own place on Metro with the kids. No car, nothing. Living on nothing but food stamps, no cash. Walk into the store with the twin stroller, carrying my groceries home. And he shows up. "Oh, we can make it work, blah, blah, blah. It's Christmas time. Come to my family's stuff, this and that." Stayed around long enough to get tax money. Spent $7,000 in probably less than 2 weeks. Didn't even pay the electric bill for me. Hiding the money from me. I did that twice. But see, and then I got another place in Troy because I had to move. And they got old enough, you have to have a 3-bedroom, Well, anyway, every time he would come, I didn't let him in that time. I didn't want him to come back. I was done. But where he was staying, they wanted to get rid of him. And as soon as somebody found out where I moved, it was a friend of mine, they dropped him off on my front door the first day I moved in. I had to trick him to get out that time, but we got in a fight trying to get him out, and tried to take his phone this time so he couldn't call the cops. He thought he'd be able to stay if he called him again. They'd tell him, use your husband, he could stay like before, like he'd done a lot of times before. And I went to jail barefoot for trying to take his phone, and they let him leave with a suspended license and destruction of property charge. So I lost my Metro, and that's why I haven't had a place for 6 years until now. And we haven't lived together since then. But I'm just now filed divorce. That's why I'm divorcing him. Yeah. But that's like the kind of thing. Like now, if I'm in a relationship now, and I'm with a good guy. But he could be not even trying to do something wrong, or not trying to be controlling at all. But if something, we're arguing, for example, or something reminds me of what I went through when I was married, I can overreact. And I panic, and I've tried to run off and just act like it's like I'm right back in that situation again. And I don't know if it's exactly a flashback, but it's just, it feels exactly the same. And when I talk about it, like I'm talking about it now, it's like it plays in my head like a movie all over again. I can just picture all the stuff that happened. I could go on, and I'm trying not to. That's what PTSD is like. You just see it all over again. Before I got this place, I stayed at his grandma's, and he was there. But I was in the basement and he was upstairs. But just like being in the same house, he would come home, like, even though we didn't get along, but he really wasn't in a lot of contact with me, like, we can get along, we can talk, about the kids, and we don't fight a lot, but I can't be around him. When I was in that close of quarters, I'd cry. I'd be scared when he came home. And he would listen. He could hear everything I said if I talked on the phone, and he would do it. But I'm going to cut this off because once again, my phone's running out of space. So,